Okay, we have a public hearing on the budget, which will be followed by the Cunningham Town Board meeting and then the regular meeting of the Urbana City Council. I'd like to open the public hearing on the budget. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on the budget for the coming year? Anyone? Well, if no one wants to testify on the budget, I will close the hearing. We'll begin the next meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ammons, Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Jacobson, Mr. Madigan,
Here.
Ms. Marlin,
Here.
Mr. Roberts,
Here.
Mr. Smythe,
Here.
Mayor Pressing.
Here. The first item is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, May 19th, 2014.
Move approval.
Motion by Marlin, seconded by Smythe. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. We'll move to petitions and communications, and if anybody would like to address the Urbana City Council, we have these little cards at the back on the table near the door, and you can fill it out and give it to our city clerk, Phyllis Clark. First person, Bishop King James and Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood do not wish to speak out for the record, but they still have concerns about the Ellis subdivision sewer problems. And next is Roger Meyer, who is from Countryside Second Subdivision, and he would like to answer questions if needed. We could do that, I suppose, at the time. We'll do that at the time of the discussion. Okay, and then we have Robin Arbiter, who, you want to speak, right? Okay, thank you.
My name is Robin Arbiter. I live at 1511 Hunter Street in Urbana. I've lived on the cul-de-sac of Hunter Street on the Aspen Court property for 13 years. Some of my neighbors have lived here for 20. Some have moved in and out of the complex for 30. And many have roots, family ties, and economic situations that keep them here. The Learman Neighborhood Action Committee, or LNAC, has come before you in the past to highlight the challenges to the neighborhood, including the loss of more than 120 apartment units that served families with poor credit and limited income, as well as the lack of amenities needed to sustain neighborhood-based education, social activities, and safe and healthy recreation. LNAC has not asked you to fix all these problems, but rather to partner with us in conceiving and carrying out solutions. The community garden is a notable example of this partnership. The Learman Neighborhood Needs Assessment is also a significant accomplishment, and we are extremely appreciative of the community development staff and the interns' commitment to finishing this project before the planned redevelopment of Urbana townhomes and rehabilitation of Aspen Court. Although we are talking only about 2 complexes, we are also talking about 12 acres of land that previously provided 240 housing units on South Learman and now offer fewer than 140. Currently, the Housing Authority and the city are scheduled to review proposals by developers interested in buying Aspen Court and the Urbana townhome site. Meanwhile, careful review of the needs assessment and its implication for redevelopment and rehab in the area is critical. The upcoming project stands to radically impact the entire Learman neighborhood, but for working poor households particularly, there will be a significant change if there's any possibility that the current rents offered at Aspen Court would be raised. LNAC plans to set aside time to really look at the needs assessment data, and I hope we can do that with council members and staff who will be in positions to advocate for the neighborhood's needs throughout the development process. Okay. The need to do this is clear in light of recent reports about serious crime at Hamilton on the Park and Housing Authority's recent $200,000 loan to the company that manages it to cover a fence and security. News of this is reason to look at any upcoming project in the Learman neighborhood, not just in light of buildings and physical amenities, but in terms of long-term staffing and management practices and how these will impact residential life both on the property and in the surrounding areas. I personally will be very disappointed if there's much discussion about fences that are impenetrable to walkers or wheelers, or about armed security in the neighborhood. A secure fence and armed security guards at Aspen Court will be far less effective and sort of demoralizing than a fence with sanctioned openings and a full staff of workers who know the tenants, know what they are seeing in terms of guest activity, and who are empowered to hold people accountable to their leases. While neighbors are eager to see lower density and better designed buildings on the Urbana townhome site and improved conditions on the Aspen Court site, we will alleviate few of the entrenched public and family safety issues in the area if we don't push for an equally high caliber of staffing and management. The three-way agreement between Aspen Court's owner and management company, Green Street Realty, the City of Urbana, and the Housing Authority makes a great deal of sense in terms of layering the funding opportunities it allows a developer. It's clear that Green Street Realty's owner is done putting any more money into the property than is absolutely necessary. He is the last in a string of 7 owners in 14 years to arrive at this point, and residents on and off the site are feeling the effect. The current conditions on the property overall are not improving. Dead trees, not just limbs, are standing around and sometimes falling, only to lie about for a month at a time. More than 20 units are empty and uninhabitable, and as more become uninhabitable,
You have 1 minute, Ms. Arbiter.
May I have 2 minutes? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And as more become uninhabitable, necessary repairs are being deferred. The community laundry room's door has been removed, its bathroom stripped of fixtures, due, according to workers, to repeated vandalism. Gutters are sagging, and getting them cleaned requires a work order from each tenant. It is common to see folks rolling dice, fights being set up for posting online, and some additional trouble created by visitors linked to specific apartments. Many of these issues are blamed on bad tenants and Section 8 tenants, an unfair characterization of the problems because Section 8 voucher holders can be easily held accountable to their leases, which go further than the Urbana City Ordinance in its expectations for good tenancy. The reality is that many Section 8 and HUD housing renters in the area feel they are at the mercy of their landlord's unwillingness to hold other tenants accountable to their leases. Moreover, it's clear to most renters that property and people problems reflect management and funding issues which have plagued this neighborhood again and again. Meanwhile, at Urbana Townhomes, fire training began in October, it was interrupted in November, resumed in April, and resumed again in May. While neighbors understand many issues have played a role in this, the site is devastated and continues to send a powerful, reflective message to residents who believe that this mess would not be standing for this long, either in the campus area or any solidly comfortable middle-class neighborhood in Urbana. While area salvage teams have made significant inroads in leveling the rubble, with iron and bricks disappearing nightly, neighbors are quite ready for the view to change and are eager to see city contractors take over the work and finish it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. Any questions? Diane?
More question for staff. Do we have an update on when the demolition will be completed?
John Schneider will explain this.
We opened the bids on May 8th. We selected a low bidder, and we negotiated with that low bidder. We are in the process of, the contract was completed today to be routed, and then we can issue a notice to proceed. how long, we give them 60 days to complete, but once they start, you know, it'll move along pretty quickly, I have a feeling.
Is there a way to encourage them to start sooner rather than later?
Well, we have to get the contract signed and
Right.
executed, and they'll start within, you know, they have a certain time period. Usually it's within 10 days of the issue of the proceed order. Meanwhile, our Public Works staff have been securing the fence. People come in, they break in, but we've been keeping on that, and I think the police department gets out there as often, you know, does drive-through in the neighborhood, things like that. So if we catch people, we've been out there a lot. We've never caught anybody out on the site.
I understand parts of the retaining wall are being carried away now. Is that something?
Well, our Public Works staff actually removed a significant portion of the retaining wall for reuse and other landscaping projects.
Well, that answers that question.
Good to know. All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. I have a proclamation that I would like to read. Whereas marriage of two people forms the base of the family unit and helps to build a cohesive and successful society, and whereas the County of Champaign has been issuing marriage licenses to all couples since March of 2014, and whereas on June 2nd, 2014, the Religious Freedom and Marriage Fairness Act allows marriage licenses to be available equally to all couples in all 102 counties of the state of Illinois, and whereas on June 2nd, 2014, the Religious Freedom and Marriage Fairness Act allows all couples joined by civil unions at no cost for 1 year to have their unions changed to marriages dated from the day of their civil union ceremonies, and whereas all forms of legal marriage may be beneficial to the children being raised by loving couples as well as to the people of the state of Illinois and Champaign County. Now, therefore, we, Donald R. Gerard, Mayor of the City of Champaign, and Laurel Lunt Pressing, Mayor of the City of Urbana, do hereby proclaim June 2014 as Respect and Celebrate Marriage Equality Month in the cities of Urbana and Champaign. Okay. Reports of standing committees. The Committee of the Whole was you.
It was
Charlie.
Eric.
Oh, it was Eric. Eric, are you on the phone?
I think he's negotiating gates at O'Hare, from what I understand.
Okay, he's
And
negotiating gates at
Carol's
O'Hare.
out. I can take.
Okay, so
I can-
Charlie will
Unless Bill wants to do it.
jump to the rescue here. The Committee of the Whole.
Yeah,
Charlie
okay,
Smythe.
some of these were sent to council with recommendations, others were not. And I've lost my notes on it, so I'm not sure which are which. Some of these require staff report. The first item up is resolution number 2014-529R, a resolution approving the 2014 update of the capital improvement plan for the city of Urbana. Did we send that to council with a
There's
recommendation?
no.
No, we hadn't. Okay, so we've just sent that to council, and we need to get the staff report.
You ready? Hi, I'm Brad Bennett. I'm an assistant city engineer with the engineering division. This is Craig Schonkweiler. He's the other assistant city engineer with the engineering division. We're here tonight to present the 2014 capital improvement plan to you. We're going to try to keep it short in the interest of time, but we have a couple of slides we want to go through. Hopefully you have received the document and have that with you. Give you a little background on the capital improvement plan. It's a planning document we use for infrastructure. It helps us plan out all our projects for the upcoming 5-year period, so it's very important to our staff and our planning efforts and our work level. The capital improvement plan came out of some research that they did back in the 1980s regarding the streets, the sewers, the lighting, as far as establishing, what deficiencies were, and the amount of money involved in rehabilitating the infrastructure or installing additional infrastructure to meet the community's needs. The first capital improvement plan was adopted in 1988. The adopting ordinance is 8788-R-14. And I mentioned earlier, the capital improvement plan that you have before you covers a 5-year planning period going all the way out to fiscal year 18-19. Kind of run through some of the things that are covered in the capital improvement plan as far as budgets. The budget for the sanitary sewer utility fee, the stormwater utility fund, the state motor fuel tax fund, the local motor fuel tax fund, as well as the capital replacement improvement fund are all included. And these are total cash balance budgets where you have the revenues and the expenditures, and they have to balance out to a positive balance at the end of the year, or at least a zero balance. Some of the other items that are included in capital improvement plans that don't necessarily involve full budgets would be projects that are included in other budgets that you've previously heard through community development, like the tax increment financing districts 1, 2, 3, and 4, as well as the community development block grant funds. The first one we're going to talk about is Sanitary Sewer Utility Fund. This is funded by the Sanitary Sewer Benefit Tax, which is part of the UCSD Sanitary District Bill that people receive. It funds the operation and maintenance activities related to the sanitary sewer. It also funds rehabilitation and replacement projects, our point repair projects, our cured in place lining projects. It also funds a number of initiatives we have to help out property owners with sanitary sewer repairs or problems, and that includes the sewer lateral pavement reimbursement program, the overhead sewer program, which helps with sewer backups, and the private to public sewer conversion program. And it also funds future expansion of the system, which includes some potentially large interceptor projects. The Stormwater Utility Fund, that's funded by the Stormwater Utility Fee that went into effect in September 2013. It also funds the operation and maintenance activities, which include cleaning and televising of the storm sewer system. It once again funds the rehabilitation and replacement, which include the point repairs, the cured in place lining. It funds some of the credit and incentive programs. For example, the recent $25 rebate that we offered on the rain barrel sale is funded out of that stormwater utility fund. It also funds the stormwater compliance, the MS4 program that works on improving water quality. And it also funds some miscellaneous activities like the mosquito abatement and some of our bridge repair costs.
The other funds that we receive are the state motor fuel tax fund that we receive annually or monthly by the state of Illinois. Those funds are used primarily to resurface, reconstruct, or completely build new streets. We also use that fund to fund traffic signals and bridges. We receive about $1 million annually of state motor fuel tax funds. Local motor fuel tax fund, we receive about $700,000 annually on that. That fund we do use to resurface and reconstruct streets, some local streets, some secondary streets. Sometimes we pair that money with state motor fuel tax to do primary streets. We also do our annual pavement preservation projects such as oil and chip, microsurfacing, slurry seal, pavement patching, things like that out of local motor fuel tax. We are also paying, starting here this year, the annual debt service on Windsor Road to reconstruct that. So the local share, we're anticipating that about 44% of the local motor fuel tax revenue will be used to pay the annual debt service over the next 10 years.
And then the final budget fund to discuss is the Capital Replacement Improvement Fund. And this is kind of the catch-all one because it involves so many different infrastructure items. It's funded primarily by a general fund transfer, which was $858,000 out of the general fund this year, and then grants that we are able to capture. You'll notice when we get to the project descriptions, for example, High Cross Road, Olympian, these were grants, federal and state level grants that fund these projects, so we're not having to use city dollars. So it does fund the bike infrastructure, the brick and concrete sidewalk repairs and replacement. It funds on a very limited basis, and I'll stress the word limited because of the other demands that other infrastructure components are placing on it. The resurfacing, reconstruction, and new street construction. Most of those are paid out of local motor fuel tax and state motor fuel tax, just because there's such limited dollars available in capital improvement and replacement fund, and there's so many demands, whether it's street lighting or bike infrastructure or sidewalk repairs. So that's a challenge we kind of have moving forward. It funds street lighting projects. One of the things you'll see in the upcoming project list is about some series lights replacements on campus. It also funds some kind of non-infrastructure items like the CD home transfer and capital improvements supplementary program, as well as paying for the city's stormwater fee. As part of the stormwater utility fee, every property in Urbana has to pay the fee, so this is how the city pays for its properties. That amount of money comes out of the capital improvement and replacement fund.
Some of the challenges that we have with our infrastructure is basically the infrastructure is aging. We have declining revenue, with the more fuel-efficient vehicles. We all want to promote bicycling, but then when a person bicycles, they don't pay into the gas tax, which then doesn't come back to the to repair the road. Construction costs are ever rising. We have increased regulations. Just last year, as an example, when we microsurface a street, we are now required to fix the handicap ramps at the corners. We weren't required to do that prior to last year. We would do that on a resurfacing job, but when we would do our maintenance, now we are required to do that per the national standards. Of course, we're fiscally constrained, and basically, in essence, what that means is that we stay in the black. We do not show a negative balance, so we basically, whatever revenue we have, we try to use that, but we are limited and we don't go into debt unless it's a unique situation like the Windsor Road problem that we have, where we really don't have a choice because we can't pay as we go for that type of large project. Basically, from here on out, we'll talk a little bit about what each year will entail from here forward. This current budget year, we're looking at reconstructing Broadway, which is near Crystal Lake Park. That is a section of Brick Street that's basically degrading, falling apart. We're going to have to replace that street. We'll have to come back to council later, but right now we're anticipating to try to replace that with concrete due to the cost of replacing that with brick. We're also looking at resurfacing Lincoln from south of Killarney all the way up to the north end, and that's in preparation of the new section of the North Lincoln when it connects up with Olympian Drive. That section is also showing extreme wear and tear, and we need to get on that and resurface that next year. I'll let Brad talk about the remaining of these items here.
Thanks. You'll notice there's a series street lighting replacement. This is down in the campus area. This is an area where essentially an antiquated lighting system that we're having difficulties maintaining parts inventories on anymore. They're also potentially a little hazardous to maintain for our staff. So, that's something that we're looking forward to getting done and has been long overdue. There'll be parking lot lighting study, which is currently going on, and some improvements. Improvements will be done by city staff, public works staff, but we'll have to purchase the fixtures and pay for poles and stuff to go with that. But the goal of that is to improve the lighting levels at various city-owned parking lots. I'll let Craig talk a little bit about the pavement patching preservation.
Brad,
So-
if I could ask a couple quick questions before you change slides here. The street lighting on campus, is the university going to help at all with that? Have we asked? Not going to help us. Okay, that's too bad. And then the other thing, you talk about North Lincoln Avenue. There are several businesses up there that take advantage of that road that are not in the city. One of them is regularly drives big heavy trucks across it. It seems that we should be making efforts to get UPS and anybody else up there who drives big trucks to be part of the city.
And then annually, we go through, basically do pavement patching, pavement preservation, and pavement marking. We also do sanitary storm sewer rehabilitation, replacement, bike infrastructure repairs, replacements of brick and concrete sidewalks. The last 3 bullet points, you'll see that on every fiscal year. Those are on a basically, we have an allotment, and we go through and try to determine which are those areas based upon basically need, where we would address on an annual basis. Basically, from here on out, a good way to look at this is through Figure C, which is on page 30 of this CIP. This would be basically the summary of that sheet here. So in fiscal year 2015-16, we're looking at extending Lincoln Avenue up to Olympian Drive. Olympian Drive would be in its 2nd year of construction at that time. We're also looking at resurfacing Springfield Avenue from Gregory to Kohler, and in turn we would do Lincoln from Western to University. Both of those streets are showing significant wear. We're also looking at resurfacing Mumford down there by Yankee Ridge School. That also is a road that's showing significant wear. The way that the streets get on the list is basically staff rates the streets. We look at its condition. We basically prioritize based upon whether or not it's got a bike route or a bus route. If it's got higher amount of volume, it gets greater credit. We also look at its condition, and basically we determine whether or not we need to get to it now or if it can be held and we can wait and defer till later, because basically we can't get to everything when we need to. In fiscal year 2016-17, we're looking at the reconstructing Springfield from Kohler to McCullough. So the year before, we would be resurfacing the section to the west. Now we're looking at reconstructing from Kohler to McCullough. That would also line up with the previously reconstructed section of concrete that was over there basically in front of Strawberry Fields. That year, too, we're looking at the resurfacing of Washington and Vine intersection and Vine to the north. This project is one of those projects that ideally we wouldn't be undertaking, but it's was built in 2003, and it's showing similar decracking, basically distress to what Windsor Road was showing. So what we're going to do there is we're going to try to seal it up, cap it off, and try to get some life out of that without having to rebuild it. So we're going to try to be ahead of the curve on this project.
Do you think it's the same problem?
We're not sure yet. We would have to do a petrograph analysis, but it's showing it's the starting stages of the same type of problem. So we're hoping at that, basically we would take off the top inch and put back a very dense layer of asphalt, and we would cap it off, because water is one of the components that really degrades the road. So we want to cap that off. Fairlawn Drive, now down near the middle school, is also showing severe distress. We have a large amount of buses that use that route, so we need to get to that before long. It actually needs resurfaced this year, but we can't get to it until 2016-17. Again, the last 3 bullets are the same bullets every year that we try to get to, and they're basically reactive bullets. I mean, we're getting whatever we can get at patch and try to carry us through in the next year. 2017, what we're looking there is resurfacing Green, which is in essence the portion on campus, from Campus Town down to Lincoln Avenue. And then we would also resurface Vine, basically where the viaduct is now. And then again, we have the last 3 bullets that we annually fund. And then the last set of projects is we're looking at the first part of Green Street from McCullough to Race, which is closer to downtown. That's showing significant distress. We want to reconstruct that. Probably the year after that or the year after that, we would do the portion to the west from Lincoln over to McCullough. That project, though, is currently, we have applied, or MTD has applied for a Tiger grant for that project. If we were able to get a Tiger grant, we would combine our local share into that Tiger grant, and that would be a part of a much larger project. If we don't get the Tiger grant, we have it programmed in here to basically improve this section. We think it's an important section from Campus Town to downtown Urbana. We also would reconstruct Goodwin over there. Basically, it's like by the parking garage on the southwest corner of Goodwin and University. That road is showing significant distress. If we can analyze it and save it, we will try to save it and save some money and resurface it. But right now, we've programmed in reconstruction.
Craig?
Yes,
Quick
ma'am.
question. To me, Lincoln Avenue between University and up to 74 is just terrible, and I don't see this in the 5-year outlook. When do you expect to be working on that segment?
Actually, Lincoln Avenue from University up to Fairlawn was resurfaced probably within the last 5 years. And it is showing some distress, but I mean, it just needs crack sealing. It's in relatively decent shape. We resurfaced the section from Fairlawn to Washer about 2 years ago. The next piece from basically Washer up to south of Killarney, that would be in the next 5 years after this 5 years. So it wouldn't be till then. And basically it comes down to needs, and we have other areas that are showing greater distress than that location. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And Craig, and I wanted to ask about any plans to resurface parts of Illinois Street, which is also a connector to the campus between Race and, say, Busey, I think. Certain parts have been fixed, but other parts are in crumbling condition.
Okay.
And
What I
so
didn't
is-
include here, Mr. Roberts, is what we're doing this year, because we had already come to council for that. That portion is going to be resurfaced here this fall.
This year? Okay,
Yes.
great. All right.
Yes.
Maybe I just missed that, but
Yes.
Charlie?
Where does Bradley fit in? There's this couple or is that concrete that all can be fixed?
West of Lincoln.
Yeah.
That would be under a maintenance contract that we'll try to get a patching contract out this fall. We'll want to patch the road, so it's basically, it's listed in here in the other construction map. Patch the road, and then we want to put bike lanes on there. If not, by the end of the year, it'll be next year.
Okay, and isn't there a one block section of Green Street that you're working on this year?
Yes, it's near
Yeah.
Goodwin Avenue. That would
Okay.
be resurfaced, and we would save that piece. And in essence, when we do the section from Wright to Gregory, we would skip or omit that portion.
Okay, yeah, okay. So, but there's currently a bad piece between Orchard and Cedar, maybe.
Yes, and if we can, we'll with an asphalt patching contract, we may get in there and just mill that out and try to hold it in place until we could get to reconstruct it in 5 years.
Bill Brown?
I had a question about the brick sidewalk program. I think there was $50,000 a year budgeted for that. Did there used to be some kind of systematic replacement or repair of the brick sidewalks, and is there still a schedule for that, or how's that spent? Is it mostly maintenance, or is there a systematic program?
Well, we have a systematic program for spraying for weed control on them that we go out on an annual basis and treat them, because with the brick sidewalks, you have a lot of issues with the vegetation growing up through them and creating, a negative situation, making them non-compliant for the ADA requirements. For the replacement, and this applies to the concrete sidewalks, and I'm happy to report this because this is kind of an exciting thing, but the Champaign Regional Planning Commission actually received a grant from IDOT to do a sidewalk assessment for the Champaign-Urbana area. So they're actually right now in the process of getting ready to go out and evaluate all the sidewalks in Urbana as well as Champaign. And at the end of the project, we'll actually get a GIS database from them that's got a condition rating of all the sidewalks in Urbana. And our plan is to use that to help us to prioritize both for brick and concrete sidewalks where to best, program our dollars. In the past, we've kind of done it on a reactive basis where people would call in, they essentially get on a list for, getting their sidewalk repaired, and then they would just go through the list, based on the order it was called into. And we're hopeful that with this study that they're doing, we'll be able to kind of tackle the worst of the worst, the most non-compliant, the most problematic sidewalks in Urbana, and use our limited funds, for those really bad sections first.
That's great. And did you have something on that subject, or a different subject?
I'll come back.
Okay.
Go ahead, do your thing.
What was the revenue from state motor fuel tax?
It's approximately about $1 million.
About $1 million. So
annually.
between the state and local motor fuel tax, does that pretty much cover what we spend on streets, or do we spend additional money on streets when you consider maintenance, traffic lights, improvements, all that together?
I'd say approximately. You know, we do get some money out of the general fund that we put to it, but I mean no more than $2 million annually, is
Okay.
collectively between all three of those funds.
Okay, thanks.
Dennis?
Yeah. So I've got maybe a couple thoughts or ask some questions. One is, it looks like so far we just don't ever come back to the signage and wayfinding improvements. Now, we did some, marking parking lots and signage on the downtown parking structure, and so that's quite good. But we don't have any more money scheduled for that, through 2019. And since that was like a sort of a major plan that we adopted as a city to try to assist people in getting to the downtown and discovering Urbana's various sections and districts and facilities, are we basically stating, because it's not being funded by any of the TIF districts, that we're abandoning any kind of signage improvements the next, 15, 16 years? Or not, 10 years or whatever. It's not 16 years. It's
We'll defer to Bill.
Yeah, it's a big question.
I'd like not to use the word abandoning, but
it looks like
do we
abandoning,
have the
so I
ability
just
to
wondered.
fund phase 2 or 3 or 4 of the wayfinding? The answer is no. I think what's before you this evening and the dollars available and the street conditions certainly can't, and I would not advise it coming out of the $2 million limited dollars we have for road work. Might there be some grant money available in the future? Possibly. I think there might be that opportunity. We still have to have a local match. But no, absent TIF, absent grant, there were some pretty big numbers in that whole program, in multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into the next phases. We can't recommend that tonight or in the near term. So some other funding source, perhaps.
Okay, thanks. I guess I'm not real super surprised, but I mean, it was such a, it seemed like such a useful program to try to adopt, and we've done a nice thing to get the first phase done. But I mean,
Yeah, and
I
I would
just hope to see some more work on that.
It still is a very good program.
Right. Now, I've got another question, and it has to do with the roads. Actually, it has to do with Cunningham Avenue. The CIP indicates on some of your different maps and figures that are at the back of the book that there's going to be a lot of work done at the northern part of Cunningham Avenue in the future, and these include sanitary sewer line running down Cunningham Avenue, Figure B, street lighting projected for the part that's from Perkins to the Expressway, and there's a shaded area that indicates that there's the full project area down to University is going to be sometime in the future, but not explicitly when. And that 3 traffic signals will be installed on Cunningham. So I'm wondering if any of this is going to include any part of the Cunningham beautification plan. It looks like it's just sort of meat and potatoes, getting signals and some streetlights put in. So I'm just wondering if there's any consideration for adding some of the landscaping and small retaining walls that were originally designed for Cunningham Avenue to be installed in this section from Perkins Road North.
There are plans, and there is actually money budgeted. It's under the TIF 4 district budget, but they do have money budgeted for beautification efforts.
Right, and I think one of the greatest ways that we could beautify Cunningham Avenue, and it's not explicitly indicated in the plan, but it's implied, is the addition of trees along Cunningham Avenue. If we could find the right kind of tree that would enhance the street, that often is a softening and beautifying aspect, which I wished we could pursue. And we're not talking this year, at least, about the main part of Cunningham Avenue, but just up near the Expressway.
Yeah, and I know they're working on that. In fact, I think Brandon Boyes has been doing some work on that, and they're looking at some public art components of that as well.
Yeah, that's more.
And you can
icing
see
on
some
the
of the
cake.
improvements, they've done by the credit union. They're right at 5 points, and we've actually got planned, within this construction season to hopefully get a sidewalk extended up the west side of Cunningham from Perkins Road up to Kenyon, and the
Yeah.
multi-use path on the east side.
The sidewalk is a good, it's an important safety feature for people because I often see people walking,
Mhm.
along that stretch without having a sidewalk, so I appreciate that. I guess I'm waiting for the day when the major section of Cunningham is going to be addressed. It's a plan that we adopted, and I can't remember if it was like 2008 or something, or 5. It's been a really long time.
Really early. Yeah.
And we're just kind of waiting. And now that, the TIF District 4 is like one of our healthier districts, so I'm just hoping that we can actually do something between now and the next couple of years.
Okay, Bill Gray.
Well, just to further expand on Brad's answer, on page 16, so of the CIP, tax increment financing district number 4, if you look at Cunningham Avenue streetscape, we are looking at, if you will, a first phase. There's $185,000. So there's not a lot of specifics, but at 5 points, there's been some TIF contributions to enhance that area. Not only are we doing sidewalk work, did you mention we're closing some driveways? So we've been doing that in the past, and there's some additional driveway closures / grass, less concrete in the parkway. We are giving thought for trees and other amenities. I think we've had some thoughts of banners and that sort of thing, only realizing that the poles are structurally not capable of supporting banners, for example. So we do have meetings every so often, look at that. In fact, we met as a group just recently at the southwest corner of Perkins and Cunningham to brainstorm ideas there. So staff, community development, public works staff are meeting to put thoughts together, but hopefully we'll have more specifics in the next 12 months.
Right, and doing driveway closures is really not a visible aspect of beautification.
Right.
That, is functional, but it beggars the thought
Right.
of being a beautification aspect. So, and I appreciate the fact that we're doing, I don't know, a couple of 100 feet down there near University. That's certainly a start, and we have a good partnership there with the credit union. But it's just like 87th of the entire length of Cunningham Avenue, and I just look forward to something a little more significant.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Diane has a question.
Page 17, there's $350,000 budgeted for parking garage rehab and improvements. Can you give a little more information about that?
We'll let Bill talk about that one too.
Actually, that project is being managed by our operations division facility section. So that's John Collins, Vince Gustafson. And we're in the process of selecting a consultant. There is some parking deck repairs, and we do repairs, pretty much every 8 to 10 years anyway. So it's in talking to some consultants as to what probably will be needed, that's kind of a budgetary number, but once we hire a consultant, get a scope of service, set them loose, identify and assess the deck, that's what we anticipate. So hopefully that number's on the high side, but it's being funded by motor vehicle parking system money, which is what we put aside money for to keep the deck in good shape.
Is this something we'd have to do anyway if we decided to do something different with the parking deck in a couple years after?
Yes,
the
this is
downtown
really
study?
to keep the structural integrity of the decking system, the masonry work. There's other work that will be identified that unfortunately water creates issues as time goes on. So yes, whether we go up, out, sideways, whatever, we still need to do this work.
And we still plan to look at parking fees for the garage as well?
Actually,
as
there's a
downtown?
major staff meeting of that coming up very soon, spearheaded by the finance department.
Great.
Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick, following up on the Cunningham Avenue thing. The only signalization that I see there is on North Cunningham, there is existing signals being upgraded, or
And
so there's no new.
you're correct. Actually, Cunningham Avenue within the roadway proper is the Illinois Department of Transportation. It's their responsibility to maintain and resurface the road. The signals there, the only signal upgrade we have is with the airport road improvements. And actually, the Department of Transportation is funding 100% of those upgrades through the Economic Development Program grant that we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Right. Okay. And then my other question was, what Dennis was talking about sanitary sewer on North Cunningham. Where do I see that in here?
So it's figure
That was on figure B.
It's this one.
Is that-
Those are actually projects we've completed already.
Okay.
Oh, okay, all right.
I just wanted to know what was getting dug up out there. Thank you.
I have one last.
Okay, Diane, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I know the hour's getting late. I have a request. At some point, can we schedule a update or a briefing for council on what an enterprise zone is, what the metro zone does, and I guess maybe in conjunction with a briefing on TIF districts. I don't remember ever actually hearing an explanation of an enterprise zone, and there's this map here, and it makes, it makes no sense whatsoever. So can we in the future just get a nice study session on that at some point?
I think I can answer that. Brandon Boyce back here and the staff in that part of CD has to redo enterprise zones and all that in the coming 6 months. So
Great.
we're going to get a whole lesson on this.
Metro zone too?
I'm sure they can include that in the thinking.
Why not? Thank you.
We did have one final slide that we actually needed some input from council on. And if you remember, we had some monies that were transferred out of the Capital Improvement and Replacement Fund for the CD program. To kind of compensate for that, they used some of the community development block grant funds to do infrastructure projects. Now, we're talking about $30,000 to $40,000 available annually, and this year's monies are actually committed to the Kerr Avenue Sustainable Development project if that goes through. But one of the things we're looking from council is some guidance as far as beyond that project, what type of other projects you would like us infrastructure-wise to take a look at. And we've listed out here, what several of the options are and what their price tags are. So you can see, based on 30 to 40,000, it might take, 2 to 3 to 4 years, depending on what the costs of these different improvements are. But, some of the options are sidewalk improvements from Busey from Sunset to Fairview at $78,000. That's to fill in some gaps of missing sidewalk in that area that we've had requests to put in. Sidewalk improvements on Hill Street, Harvey to Lincoln. Once again, these are some areas where there are no sidewalks. $50,000. Street lighting. If you remember back when we were putting the bike lanes on Kinch, there were some requests from the residents along Kinch from Washington down to Florida to put in street lighting. We've estimated it would be about $100,000 to do that. And then the Learman neighborhood, providing at least intersection lighting, if not, more neighborhood type lighting in that area. And that we haven't costed out. It would be significantly, higher than any of the amounts listed here. But, it could be done in bits and pieces as funds were available. So that's one of the things we were looking for some direction from council on.
You would know about the sidewalk priorities after the regional planning study, correct?
Yeah, I mean we're going to use that more as a assessment of what the condition of existing sidewalks are. These are actually a couple areas, and these have to be in the target block areas in order to be used for the CDBG funds. So the areas mentioned here fall within
Okay.
those target.
Just how do you use those funds the best?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Bill?
Just, I'll just say one of the things I get most comments on from people is they'd like more street lighting, especially in the Ambets too, and the Lehrman neighborhood.
Dennis?
Yeah, of course, I really do support adding more street lighting in the Lehrman neighborhood because this comes up a lot, and the people there who live there really feel that this is a significant improvement that could make a big difference in their safety as well as their quality of life.
So do you get more Concerns from citizens about lighting than about sidewalks? These are different neighborhoods, obviously. So you
Yes.
can't really ask the public which one they want because it's one neighborhood versus what the other neighborhood's priority is.
Correct.
But do people tend to be more concerned about lighting than about sidewalks?
Well, I think lighting tends to be more of a safety issue
Mhm.
than the sidewalk. So, I mean, you know, our goal is to be a walkable, bikeable community. So, I mean, you know, we don't want to diminish the importance and necessity of sidewalks as well. But yeah, I mean, lighting definitely ties in with public safety.
Yeah. Charlie?
No, I would suggest that if these are the four choices, that they be part of the city tour that's coming up. And I would ask that the street lighting in the Learman neighborhood be considered as part of the redevelopment of the two properties out there. You know, how much would that help cover some of the lighting, and could we, you know, tag along on some of that, for example?
Yeah, I'd just say that because what you're thinking about the redevelopment is all going to be private property. The city wouldn't be installing those street lights for them. And there is lighting on Liverman itself, but I've heard, you know, even toward Kinch, but like, you know, Lantern Way, Easy Street, and others that don't have lighting now. And these are, yeah, it's more like 7 blocks.
Okay. It's almost 9 o'clock, so we probably better move on. We got a lot of
I'll
other
move-
things,
I'll move
but thank
approval.
you.
I'll move approval
Okay.
of the CIP.
I'll second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. Any other discussion? We should probably have a roll call on this, right? It's big, it's a lot of money. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Madigan,
Yes.
Ms. Marlin,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Smythe.
Yes.
Oh, Mr.
Okay,
Jacobson.
welcome back. Uh-oh. Don't go to Memphis.
Mr. Jacobson,
He said yes.
did he say yes?
He said
Okay.
yes. Okay, thank
Okay.
you. That motion carries. Thank you all very much. Okay, we're up to resolution, oh, no, it's Charlie. Go ahead, Charlie.
2014-530R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a local agency agreement with Illinois Department of Transportation. This is the Airport Road, Willow Road to Cunningham Avenue, US Route 45 monies. And Craig, I guess. is
So
up for
I've
that.
stayed up here so I can talk to you.
Okay.
So on Airport Road West, I think Tom Carino came to you folks a couple weeks ago to get an agreement on the passing of the agreement between Frasca and the city. And that is now actually a part of this agreement, which is basically the Economic Development Program agreement between the city and IDOT, basically for 1.305902 million. So that is what the first resolution is, up for consideration.
Okay, any other questions?
Move approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Charlie?
Okay, next up is resolution 2014-531R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a preliminary construction engineering services agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation, Airport Road, Willow Road to Cunningham Avenue.
Basically, what this is it would allow the mayor and city clerk to enter into an agreement with Foth, who is a engineering firm in Champaign, to do the preliminary and construction engineering for this project.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
Next up is ordinance number 2014-554, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance fiscal year 2013-14 for Airport Road, Willow Road to Cunningham Avenue, US Route 45.
Basically, this is a resolution amending the budget to allow us to pay and get back reimbursement through the Economic Development Program with IDOT.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. Any questions, discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes. Okay, next up is
Excuse me,
oh.
there's one other person that needs to vote.
Mayor Bresson?
Yes. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Next up is Resolution 2014-532R, resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement between the city and Common Ground Food Co-op to provide bicycle parking spaces. For the committee, I so move.
I'll second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. Charlie?
And next up is ordinance number 2014-555, an ordinance amending City Urbana Code, Chapter 3, Section 343, increasing the number of Class R1 liquor licenses for Don Juan Mexican Restaurant at 1106 West University Avenue.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Madigan.
state law precludes me from voting on this as we're discussing this as a liquor license holder in the city of Urbana, therefore I shall recuse myself.
Okay.
For the committee, I so move.
I'll second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay, and item G is ordinance number 2014-446, an ordinance approving, authorizing, entering into, and executing a third amended and restated intergovernmental agreement providing for the creation of the Urbana-Champaign Big Broadband Consortium, authorizing amendment to intergovernmental agreement, providing for continued consortium financial support of UC2B through October 2014. And this came to us without recommendation, so I think we're waiting on a staff report on this as well.
You all heard, and many of you attended, the press release on Thursday of last week where UC2B Not-for-Profit announced its partnership arrangement with ITV3 to begin the process of building out the city. Quite a momentous occasion, and I will start out by congratulating all of you for participating in getting this done and brought this far and cooperating with Champaign and the university in the grant. What this seeks to do is provide 6 months of interim funding while UC2B Not-for-Profit continues through the transition process of shifting from operating itself to providing for ITV3's operation of the UC2B network system and for begin building out the system. It is estimated that for the 6-month period, beginning May 1 through October 31 of this year, from the city of Urbana, they will require approximately a little over $24,000, which represents just slightly over $4,000 per month from the city continued. I suspect, though no one knows, that there is a likelihood that additional funding beyond the 6 months will be required because the revenue source, revenue force UC2B from its subscribers will be transferred over and taken over by ITV3 as part of its process.
I would like to say that there are other big cities that tried to get this done, Seattle and Chicago, and they haven't gotten it done yet. So I think, it's been a real effort and a lot of negotiating going on, but I think we've really done something quite amazing. So, anybody want to comment on this?
Yeah.
Make a motion? Dennis?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that one of the seeming pluses for working with ITV3 was that they are also the owners, or it's a family ownership of Family Video, and they offer using the family video stores that are already in the community, of which there are 3 in the Champaign-Urbana area, as local offices and contact points for service, which seems to be already a wonderful thing because they're already in the community, and it's seems very organic to the future use of this facility. And we also talked about making this a public utility, but it just wasn't possible. So this is the best we have found so far.
Okay, is there a motion? Diane?
I got a couple questions first. This $24,000 that we're committing to paying, does that include any repayment to the U of I? I understand we still owe like $220,000, or they expect that to be repaid. How is that going to be?
I am not sure how they're planning on repaying that. I think they will be working out an arrangement with the U of I to be working that down.
They meaning the not-for-profit?
Right. This money will go for the actual operation, Sabrina's salary,
Okay.
and winning down the staff, I would imagine.
Okay, so the $24,000 goes to her salary. How about they're being sued for something?
They are not being sued. The City of Champaign, as lead agency, is being sued by one of the vendors. It was a 2-part lawsuit. One was a claim for refund of the retention, and then the other is in relation to work that allegedly was promised but wasn't given to them, given the opportunity. The retainage was held up pending receipt by Champaign and its lead engineering firm of lien releases, lien waivers, and that has been done. And from my understanding, that release or that retainage has been paid out. The suit is being defended by Champaign. Obviously, at some point, we will be asked to contribute. This money does not include
does
that,
not go that,
but
okay.
that suit is probably
Okay.
not likely to go very far.
Okay, all right, thanks. I'd move approval of ordinance number 2014-04-046.
I'll second.
Motion by Marlin, seconded by Roberts. Any other discussion? Yes.
I would just say in reply to Dennis's observation that we were unable to turn this into a public utility, I say thank heavens for that, because now it actually has a chance as a business.
You're right.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin? Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay, and the last item from committee is a motion to approve the city council goals for 2014, 2015. Actually, it's for this, it's 2014 to 2017 technically. I guess we are the staff. We're the staff report. I guess Mike, Dennis, and I have worked on this on and off for months. Our apologies for how long it's taken. There have been a lot of distractions. I think we've captured or tried to capture staff input, public input, our individual input. I hope we've got it all on here. And of course, we will review it every 6 months and fine tune it as we go and keep it updated.
Yeah, Dennis's suggestion, we added a new goal, transportation and connectivity, and Dennis put together some nice wording for that. I distributed that at the meeting. It didn't quite make the final cut that went out with the council packet, so that's one change. And Diane, I think some suggestions you had, I incorporated those into this final version.
But on page 3, we seem to be missing G through K in this final version. Is that part of the
Yeah.
connectivity statement?
Yeah,
That's-
those will move to connectivity.
Oh.
Yeah, that's where they came from, and they just got regrouped under the connectivity and
Fine.
transportation.
It's page 8.
Bill, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Okay, Bill Brown.
On page 11, I think Dennis added Explorer Barnes Mobile Home Park, mobile home resident relocation. I don't know if you want to leave the prefab suggestion in there. Probably doesn't make a big difference. We can consider that. I'd just say facilitate Barnes Mobile Home resident relocation with the least possible financial disruption to residents. to
I
the,
think we're talking about maybe looking at an option of not relocating. So I don't know if you want to use relocation as if everybody has to move. We're going to look at a lot of different options. One of them is was suggested by Rich Henschel to treat it like a national park, where when they buy some land and there's cabins on it, they let the people have a lifetime estate. So I think we need to look at a number of things besides relocation.
Yeah, we still, I think, need to be committed to assisting in solving the question that has arisen. So, I mean, I could see adopting Bill's rewording of that's number
What's your rewording? Is it in red?
two, number 2C. Yeah, it's in red, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
Do you want to read your
So-
rewording?
Do you
well,
want to make it a
now
little more generous?
I didn't know about the relocation.
No.
Oh.
Well, some of them
Options.
may be relocated, and some of them may be just expired. And their property may expire. But that's a whole other question, actually.
Options, you could say, instead of relocation?
Yeah.
Good options.
Resident options?
Yeah, options. So it's, what does it say? Explore Barnes mobile home resident options.
Mm-hmm.
I can leave it at that and see how that goes on. It doesn't hurt, I think, to mention the fact that we actually are concerned about this, and this can be one of the goals that we have is moving forward as a
Sure.
city. So
Charlie?
I make the motion that we have that additional comment.
Charlie, did you want to say
So
something?
I think at this point, we're sort of accepting these minor changes as friendly amendments. Not that we have a motion on the floor even. We're
Would you like to
fixing.
put a motion on the floor?
Let me just make one more suggestion. In the new paragraph that Dennis adds, he puts in the second sentence, Urbana shall encourage the development. Shall or will? There's always that question of which of those two words to use. Are you particularly wedded to shall, or does Urbana will encourage the development just as strong, or do you want it to be that strong as
How
the
about
shall?
Urbana encourages? Just
Yeah,
take away the
Urbana
argument.
encourages. That's even better.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, Urbana encourages. I like that. That's more appropriate. Yeah, okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the council goals with these minor changes that we've made tonight and all the red stuff that's been corrected over the past couple weeks. So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That
Wha-
motion, well, you did good work. It
Wow,
takes
that's-
time to think about things.
That's hefty. Thank you.
Okay, so that motion carries. Thank you very much, Charlie. Eric, Charlie was filling in for you with the,
Yeah, thank you very much, Charlie. I would rather be there than here.
I can imagine. What time's your flight?
The latest is it's going to be 9:45.
Oh, good. We have him for 20 more minutes.
It keeps
Okay.
getting later and later.
okay. Reports of special committees, I don't believe we have any. Reports of officers. Here's Rich Henschel, the comptroller.
Good evening. I just have a couple of items I wanted to follow up on from things that were brought up during the budget presentations over the last several weeks. I'm passing around a couple exhibits, 3 exhibits in total. The first exhibit is in regards to the IT division. IT division was moved from the finance department to the executive department as proposed in this new budget. The question was asked, what was the budget for IT before and after? And the first exhibit shows the budget previously in 13-14 when it was in finance, and now proposed in 14-15 in the executive. A couple of minor changes in the personnel section to reduce the budget, and then some splitting of certain line items that were in finance that are now half in IT and half in executive and half still in finance. The second exhibit is in regards to the library. The question was asked, in last year's budget book, there was a small table that showed some information about the other funds in the library other than the general operating fund. The exhibit we passed around was put together by Celeste Choate and her staff to sort of bring that information current. As she mentioned at the time, there is no proposed budget for 14-15 for the other funds, which are non-general funds in the library. And the last exhibit I passed around is a compilation, excuse me, of certain modifications that are now being proposed to the 14-15 budget, and I can go through those quickly in a little bit of detail. In the general fund, there was a line item included in the form of revenue from the capital improvement fund to reimburse the general fund for certain Windsor civil engineering services. That project doesn't exist anymore, but this line item was erroneously included, so we need to strike that. There is a reduction of legal services by about $11,000 in the executive department. City computerization is being increased by $9,700, and it's an offset, as you see a little below here, in cable TV and the PEG fund. There's a reduction of $10,000 in seasonal landscaping. Personnel costs, a reduction of $10,000 in utilities, both of those in Public Works, and we now are including the cost to cover the expenses for the acquisition of 610 South Glover in the Public Works Department. So there's a total proposed change to the 14-15 budget of $240,000 net increase to the cost to the general fund. The next section is the cable TV, the PEG reserve fund. In order to help balance the budget for that fund, there is a reinstatement of a quarter-time position for $6,500, but there is a reduction or elimination of a half-time proposed production assistant in that budget. There's a reduction of the computerization cost in the fund and an elimination of the proposed transfer to VERF for equipment acquisition. So that's a reduction of $41,000 in that budget. In the Equipment and Vehicle Replacement Fund, Public Works is recommending the postponement of the acquisition of 2 passenger vehicles in the miscellaneous passenger vehicle account for a total of $32,000, and a postponement of acquiring certain equipment purchases or replacements totaling $152,000. So that reduces the VERF budget by $184,000. The last 2 items are a reduction in the Landscape Recycling Center in a personnel line item by $4,000, and a reduction, an increase by putting back into the budget in TIF 4 $128,100 for the annual Park District projects reimbursement. So in total, all of the positives and negatives result in about $138,000 increase to the total city budget for proposed 14-15.
Any questions? Dennis?
What are the Park District projects that we're supporting? In that the Park District is a...
The TIF 4 Park District projects in particular.
Are these new ones, or are these previous ones we've already supported?
I think the projects themselves change from year to year, but it's part of the agreement with the Park District for the establishment of the TIF that goes back a number of years, my understanding is.
So it's like it's an obligation that we carry year by year by year, that we reimburse the Park District a certain
That's
amount?
my understanding, is it's standing in agreement that go back to the implementation of the TIF.
Those lucky guys. Oh, no.
Charlie, did you want to
As
say
you
something?
recall, we did this very similar thing in TIF 3 with the school district and the Park District. There were parts of projects that were done under the TIF fund.
Like we helped with King's School.
Yeah, we did that. But we don't, I wasn't aware of any specific project in TIF 4 itself that we actually have talked about. Like a nebulous project?
No, I think there's specific projects.
I think there are
Otherwise, we wouldn't
specific
have a number.
projects that,
Yeah.
you know, that we reimburse them for from the TIF funds on an annual basis. What those are going forward, I don't think we know.
All right.
For next year? No, we don't know for next year what their projects will be.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Any other questions for Rich? Thank
So you'll be asked to approve the 14-15 budget in 2 weeks on the 16th, and as you are asked to approve that, we'll ask you to include these modification in your approval at that time.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
I would like to report a big change in the 911 funding, which I think is going to be good for us ultimately. At the very last minute in the legislature, the city of Chicago got a bill passed that would allow them to increase their fees on telephones from the current $2.50 per phone, which they got approved through the legislature. They never had a referendum. There are counties in the state that had referendum questions passed in the 1980s and 1990s, like Champaign County. Also the city of Evanston, they're at the same rate as we are, $1.50 for landlines. And then the state came in and did a lower tax for cell phones. So this new bill would allow Chicago to have the option to raise its $2.50 rate up to $3.90. And it also changed the state cell phone fee from what we get now is 57 cents or 58 cents to up to 66 cents, which is, you know, a step in the right direction, but it's not really going to help us. So I think there's a growing consensus that the rest of the state should ask for the same thing that the city of Chicago got and make it be optional up to the local municipality or 911 operating system through their participants to gear it to what is really needed in that locality. Because the city of Quincy, for example, never had a referendum, and the city has to pay for everything that goes on in Adams County for funding 911 systems. So I think this, you know, like most legislation, you sort of get step by step and it becomes clearer as you go along. But I talked with Paul Vallis, who's the lieutenant governor candidate with Governor Quinn, and he saw it the same way, that this was a step in the right direction and that we should go for the whole state being covered by this. And I think we should just ask for the full amount, and the legislature might not do that, but I think it sets a really big precedent to do this for Chicago. So I think that's good news. Any questions on that? No questions. Okay. Anyone else? Reports of officers? Brandon Boyes.
Just going to go over a couple quick highlights from the May Economic Development Report. The UBA held a ribbon cutting for Personify Incorporated on May 22nd. That was in 210 West Main Street. If you all recall, that was subject of a redevelopment agreement with Cake Design Development. This is sort of culminating that agreement. We now have a major tech tenant on the upstairs there on Main Street. Personify graduated out of Enterprise Works. They've grown to a company that has their corporate offices here in Urbana, but also in Chicago and Vietnam. We're very excited to have them. And the mayor, we featured a photo of her in the report of being personified. Their software automatically clips out the outline of your person in real time and can put that in like a live chat session, so you can be in front of the content you're presenting or in front of any other content on your computer. And it's expected to become more widely adopted. There were also 3 ribbon cuttings in CoLab. We have 3 new creative tenants. Ditchstock is a professional illustrator. David Michael Moore is the name of the artist. He actually designed the map in the new downtown brochure, which was handed out last week. It was a collaboration between UBA and our city marketing. Also the front cover of that features the artwork of local artist Langston Alston. And we also had ribbon cuttings for Adjacency, who's a videographer. If you watched any of the CU 150 videos that put the spotlight on tech industry in our community, those were commissioned by the Small Business Development Center at the EDC. However, a lot of the videography work was done by Adjacency and also Cathedral Consulting, two tenants of CoLab. So we have a growing creative cluster, as was joined by Pandemonium Donuts, James Kyung, who's been responsible for long lines around the block and will probably do so more. He's not producing donuts in the space, but he is basing his business operation there, and you'll find him at the farmers market as well. We also had Digital Equality Initiative join CoLab. They repurpose old computers that are donated by companies, and the city actually donates computers for this purpose. They also offer computer literacy training for residents. Masita Grill opened. That's the new Korean barbecue restaurant at the former Morning Cup and More space in the Stratford apartment building on Race Street. And that was a major project because it required the installation of a hood, and that had prevented restaurants from occupying that space for quite some time. So that was quite an accomplishment, and you can grill at the table too. So I don't think any restaurant's been offering that in our community. The CU MTD board approved the intergovernmental agreement with the city for the siting and proposal generation for transit facilities in downtown Urbana. The board approved that last week, Wednesday. So the agreement is in the process of being executed. In addition, Uncle Martin's Sports Bar opened up on Cunningham Avenue. That's another exciting addition. We've just had so many businesses and restaurants opening lately. And a couple more quick points. Natalie Kenny Marquez, our market director, was asked to present at the on marketing of Illinois farmers markets at the USDA Midwest Regional Office in Chicago. And our public arts Art at the Market first event on May 10th had very high attendance. That was attended by over 400 people. There was African drumming and Suminagashi printmaking workshop. It was quite the scene, especially for the African drummers if you were there for that event. So, any questions?
Dennis.
I could turn my mic on. Is Panda Strike still operating out of CoLab? Is that still a startup business?
Panda Strike, there is a independent programmer, Andrew Jansen, who goes, he had been working on an independent project called Hands On, and he is now working with Panda Strike, which is an LA-based tech firm.
Okay,
and they might be a little bit distributed. So increasingly we're seeing our tech folks regionally have larger connections abroad, and that's one of them. But Panda Strike is not based in CoLab.
But Andrew might still be.
Andrew Jansen is.
Very good.
Hi.
Diane.
Is the graduate students project that's going to focus on downtown Urbana going to, do you know what it's going to focus on in particular?
Grace Kyung is our economic development intern for this summer. She'll be working on a variety of projects for with us, but when she goes to focus on her capstone for her master's degree, she really has a lot of latitude to select what she does. However, she has expressed an interest in working with MTD on the first phase of the proposal generation process for the transit facility and related development.
Okay.
A lot of things going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have, under new business, ordinance number 2014-06-056, an ordinance approving a preliminary and final subdivision plat for Countryside Second Subdivision.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. So this is a parcel out about 1.5 miles outside of town in the edge of our extraterritorial jurisdiction at the corner of Anthony and Cottonwood. It's probably not going to come into the city for a long time, if ever. This is a revised plat, or a revised preliminary and final plat. Council approved a plat under this name last summer, but the developer was unable to make that configuration work. There were some issues with stormwater drainage on the site and with the costs of installing a public street, which was a part of that plat that was approved. So they have revised the plat to address those issues and resubmitted for approval. What we're looking at now is the current configuration with the smaller lots that were approved in the 60s, and an aerial view of the site in general. And now I'll pull up the new plat. And here's the new plat. So the new plat is reconfigured to address the drainage issues and the access issues that didn't allow the previous plat to go forward. The new plat has 6 residential lots and an outlot that has a drainage basin. The previously approved plat had 7 residential lots around a cul-de-sac street. With the new plat, all of the lots have street frontage, so they'll all be accessed off of either Anthony Drive or off of Cottonwood Road. Lots 12 and lots 13 have a flag access. It's a 20-foot access strip, which reaches down. Lot 13 reaches down to Anthony Drive. Lot 12 reaches over to Cottonwood Road. And this is a common configuration in rural subdivisions. So without getting into too many details, basically all of the requirements of the Urbana subdivision ordinance and Urbana zoning ordinance are met. Also, the Champaign County zoning ordinance applies here, and those requirements are all met. There are no waivers requested with this plat, but they are requesting a standard sidewalk deferral. There's basically no sidewalks out there now, and at the point at which sidewalks do reach out and touch these lots, they would be required to install sidewalks. The Plan Commission, I handed out, before the meeting, I handed out minutes from the Plan Commission meeting on Thursday. They voted unanimously to recommend approval of the preliminary and final plats. And staff concurs with this recommendation. And the developer and his engineer are here if you have any questions. And I'd be happy to answer questions for staff.
Any questions for Jeff? Dennis?
I'm fine. Okay, first of all, I congratulate the fact that the developer is moving forward and trying to bring this property into use in a new way. I think that's a fine thing. I read in the discussion that the 5 acres or whatever it is was considered to be too small now to farm the traditional way, and so useful transformation to subdivision seems to work, and it's on a street that probably will see some build out. And I like the idea that they're preserving what apparently is part of the old grove along the eastern edge of the property, which I think is very considerate. I understand that there will be houses, in there too, but if some of the old grove is preserved, that's great. I don't mind that there's not any sidewalks. There's no sidewalks in a lot of places in town, so not requiring them here is not an issue for me. And yes, I don't think that there's going to be sidewalk connectivity to the community, to the city at large in the near future. So I don't know how Mr. Harris is going to, he comments that he's going to install them when it's necessary, but if it takes 25 years, he'll be about 82, and I don't know what he's going to do, to get these people to get that sidewalk in, and who's going to pay for it. So I think that's kind of a strange gift of imagination. What I guess my real question is access to the back lots. We gave up the concept of having a street cul-de-sac required, and you're talking about what looks to be dirt passages, like a dirt lane, a farm lane to reach the back, or what is the structure of the access roads to Lot 13 and 12?
So basically, every lot has a driveway access. The driveways for Lot 12 and Lot 13 are pretty deep, but they will be built with county standards. I'm not sure if that's gravel or if they require paving. I think gravel might be acceptable, but it won't be a dirt road.
And our reason why I ask about this is because we have required a lot more from other subdivisions in the past. Like several years ago, we had a subdivision that was created, and they came to us at once or two or three times. And it also was a large piece of property that had an existing house in the back, and it was on Airport Road, I think, but it was near Cottonwood or...
Was that Brick Houses Road?
Yeah,
perhaps?
Brick House, that's what it's called. And they were required to install a curbed street.
Yes.
So how can this be different? Why would our standard for this subdivision be any less than what we've required of other builders in the past?
Sure. Well, with this subdivision, there's a lot more street frontage. Brick Houses Road was just along Airport Road. They probably had a few hundred feet. And then it went up several hundred feet off of the road. So this subdivision has a lot more street frontage, which allows for the lots to touch the streets instead of requiring a, basically every subdivision, every lot in every subdivision has to have public street frontage. So with the configuration of Brick Houses Road, it was because they wanted so many lots that they had to do that public street. I don't remember how many lots were in that subdivision. It was probably 8 or so. Yep, 8. So with this subdivision, we would have allowed flag lots with that one as well, but they couldn't, with minimum lot widths, they could not have more than probably 3 or 4 at that location. So the way the math works out with this one is they can have 6 lots with the 2 flag lots with our minimum lot width requirements.
Can you explain what a flag path is? It, you call it a flag path or?
Sure.
Lot?
It's called a flag lot because it looks like a flag. If you look at lot 13, follow the solid lines here.
Okay.
And it's this part is referred to as the flag pole or the access strip.
Okay, I gotcha. And is that then that lot actually is configured very unusually compared to the rest, and that the access is not joint owned; it's actually totally dedicated to the lot itself, right? So that is
Right.
that person's access path.
Yes, that's correct.
And then that person, whoever develops a house, is required to pave it, or not, or at least meet minimum standard, right?
Yeah, to meet it's the county zoning standard. So I believe that's probably gravel.
And are these lots going to be developed by individual property owners who then build to suit according to their tastes and desires and whatever? It's not going to be a subdivision that's going to be developed by the owner of the property at the currently.
I think the developer could probably answer that question better.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just wondering which it is. We don't know.
I don't know.
Could you answer that? Yes. Go ahead. Just so I understand what we're going to see here.
They would be chosen by the lot owner. We don't really have a plan. We have a general subdivision plan. Of course, there's covenants and things that dictate certain size, certain shape. We tried to be reasonable with the needs of people who, again, with the lot size being 1.5 acres, that certain people want to move out to the country and have, I guess, a country house. What that dictates, I think, started at 1,800 square feet. It can't be a mobile home structure. It has to be a fixed foundation house. Now, that includes, they can do manufactured housing, such as a Riley home type of house. But we don't have a plan for developing the houses themselves. There'll be individual builders or individual lot owners will buy them and then build the house that they want.
Right. And they're all going to be served by septic tanks? Is that correct?
Yes. According with county regulation, and separate wells for each lot.
All right. And what fire service will service this?
That one would be Carroll or I don't know if that one's Carroll. and I think Edge Scott, actually.
Mhm.
You had to ask that. I'm on that road, and I think I'm Carroll subdivision, or Carroll Fire Department.
Okay. Well, it wouldn't be the city anyway.
No, it won't be the city.
Okay.
It's Edge Scott.
Edge Scott? Okay.
Right. Okay, thanks. At first, I wasn't sure about this one, but the fact that the owners own the flagpole on the flag lot is,
Yes.
I think, a considerable improvement to my imagination.
I wanted to ask, just to refresh my memory, what's the requirement that we agreed to with the county that people have to be on the sewer system?
So the requirement is if a home property wishes to connect to a sewer system, they have to annex in. The other requirement is that they provide a means to provide for a sewer system once the sewer system reaches them. So with this property, in the owner certificate, we require that they set up a homeowners association, and if and when city sewer ever reaches them, the homeowners association is required to install sewer connections at that point.
And could I ask?
Is there a mechanism for setting aside funding for this over time? That the homeowners chip into the fund and somebody manages it, and there's reporting and auditing and all that?
No, actually, you know what? I was thinking of the previous approval.
Okay.
I'm sorry. This one, actually, every lot would have an individual requirements. With the previous approval, there was a public street, and then we would have had a public sewer reach out to touch the lots. With this one, it's individual lots that would each have to have sewer connections. And
When
that
the
would,
sewer gets close enough?
yes,
Okay.
and it's highly unlikely that it ever will.
Okay. Dennis?
Well, and so that means that whenever the city expands to its munificent beauty of being way out there, the homeowners, where whoever owns that property, will be suddenly responsible for fulfilling the needs of sewer, replacing septic tanks with sewers, because they become contiguous and they've been and they're going to be required. Then will they be? Is there a codicil in their land agreement that they're required at the time of contiguity, whatever that word is, to join the city?
Yes. Yes, within 6 months.
I'm Roger Meyer. I'm the engineer surveyor that's been working on this. And when you refer to the first page of the final plat, it's got a public sanitary sewer service section, which requires that within 6 months of a sewer being available, that the individual lot owners are responsible for extending the sewer system to their lot and lateral connection.
We find out that years later, people are really objecting to these kind of agreements that were signed a decade or so earlier. So that's why we asked the question. Okay. Anyone else? Oh,
Can I ask one question?
Jim Simon.
I take it you will, you will, record the agreement that provides for these future obligations as each lot is subdivided and platted. You will record the agreement and the special use with each lot, not just the larger plat. Reason why I ask is to put the future homeowners on notice of their obligation.
I would assume we can. I mean, I don't know what they've done in the past as far as the subdivision. Now, the Brick House is not a good example because, again, they're on, well, I don't know what Brick House is. Is Brick House on city sewer or what's
No,
the?
I think they have.
No, they're not.
Did you require them to record each individual owner had to record that?
No, they have a public street, so they have an owner certificate that requires the HOA,
Okay.
which will have the connection.
Okay. So
But-
currently they're on sewer But if they're not on sewer, they're currently on septic system, but if the sewer ever comes down Airport Road, the main line is already there for them to attach into, and then they would be online?
I don't think the main line was built. It was just stipulated in their owner's certificate that they will have to build a main line.
Each one of them know that?
Yes.
Which, there's only one house in that subdivision right now. So, that makes it pretty simple. I would assume that we can record each individual owner, and then my hope would be, I don't know what happens after that owner sells. I mean, the document, I guess, stays in legal standing as the next owner owns it, and that would be fine. Again, I don't know if in my kid's lifetime that would ever become an issue, but if it does, I guess, then those people would,
I would suspect that the title company will note all these restrictions on each title policy as the property sells and resells over the years. So each homeowner will be notified through the title company of anything that's on the surface of this plat.
In the past, we had a recent problem with that where property was annexed and the homeowners claimed that they were not put on notice. And there was a question whether the requirement was recorded against each lot versus the larger parcel.
Okay, Dennis?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think I'm ready to approve this, but I would certainly I think the city would have to require that, this information about future obligations to connectivity would have to be on any lot that's in the subdivision, so that any future owner is aware of it as part of its legal paperwork.
That's a condition you could add to the ordinance, yes.
I make a motion that that condition be added.
Okay, motion by Roberts, seconded by Smythe. Well, okay, you want to make the regular motion first and then amend it. Okay.
I move the council approve ordinance number 2014-06056, an ordinance approving a preliminary and final subdivision plat, Countryside Second Subdivision, Plan Case 2233-S-14.
Second.
Okay, motion by Madigan, seconded by Smythe.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, can I make a friendly amendment?
Yes.
That legal papers concerning the restrictions or the future responsibilities of property owners and various lots on the subdivision be attached to their title paperwork, informing them of their responsibility to the city to connect sewer lines and develop and to expect sidewalk installation should the city be annex their property.
Fine with me.
Okay, that's fine with Charlie. Is it okay with you, Mike? As a friendly amendment? Okay. Okay, we have a amended motion. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson? He's gone. Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to offer a suggestion that the language that Dennis just mentioned be included in any case like this going forward. Just that it be a paragraph in there, just so we don't have to do it again.
Does that mean we have to put it in the goals? Just a joke. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, resolution number 2014-05-027R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a promotional and marketing agreement with the Urbana Business Association for fiscal 2014-15, 2015-16, and 2016-2017. Brandon Boyce is back.
Council's considering two resolutions, this and the next, that will allow the mayor to enter into agreements with UBA as were outlined at the May 27th Committee of the Whole. Cumulative, these two agreements would fund UBA at the same level as, well, they'll fund the UBA at the same level in 14-15 as it was funded in fiscal year 12-13 and fiscal year 13-14. The first agreement is for promotion and marketing services. It is a 3-year agreement that steps down staff funding each year. The operational funding is contingent on fundraising performance. There are new reporting requirements requiring reports to council in both May and January, and requires more detailed business plan than was submitted this year in the subsequent 2 years of the agreement. The second agreement is for promotion and marketing of the calendar year 2014 Sweet Corn Festival. We're referring to them by calendar year now because the Sweet Corn actually straddles 2 fiscal years. So this is for this year's Sweet Corn Festival. It is a 1-year agreement for $10,000. That's the same as the previous several years. And it is a separate agreement as requested that will also require reporting by January. The executive director, president of the board of UBA, and the treasurer of UBA are all here as well to answer questions. And I could also answer any questions you have from staff perspective.
Any questions? Bill?
So for the matching funds of $35,000, if that had been the case currently, would they have reached their $35,000 match already this year? I mean, is that something that's easily achievable and they were already doing? I think the current in-kind amount was $23,000. And then I guess added to that would be new membership fees. They said they had 40-some new members, so how does that
I'll
work
let
out?
Cynthia respond to that because she knows these numbers well.
To answer your question, yes, we are currently reaching that level.
Dennis?
Yeah, I'd like to maybe kind of just engage in a little bit of a conversation. So one of the goals of the UBA is to become a self-sufficient, member-driven business association. Can you kind of describe what being self-sufficient is in your vision?
Well, I don't, at this point, not fully self-sufficient, but more self-sufficient, relying more on our own fundraising as opposed to funding from the city.
Through membership or other ways, would you say?
Primarily through membership, because we want to put a greater focus on our members.
Can I, and then can I ask about both different resolutions, or just are we on one at a time?
They're related, so
Okay.
I think you can
All right.
ask them.
So I've got a little shopping list. So it says also here that the city will continue to have one seat on the UBA, and that's been our economic development. Tom Carino was the person who sat on there. Have you considered, I guess in conversation with one or two other individuals on council, the topic of having a city council member participate in the board just for informational reasons, and it may not necessarily be a voting member, but many times so many issues that so many of the goals of the council are performed and realized by the UBA. Has the board ever considered inviting a city council member to participate a little more presently and to sit in on the board and be a part of the discussion on the board?
It's not something we've considered, but it's certainly something we'd be open to. We regularly have member businesses attend as guests of board meetings, and we'd be happy to have city council members as well.
Okay, great. I don't have really anything else about the marketing aspect of it. I wanted to ask you about the Sweet Corn Festival program. One of the aspects of the agreement that concerns the Sweet Corn Festival and UBA's involvement is that we now have a termination clause which suggests to me that there's a thought within the UBA to evaluate the success of this program. Now, I'll be honest. Now, I've often wondered. I know this is the Sweet Corn Festival is kind of like a golden calf, and it is one of the major kind of like profit engaging or creating events within the city, and it brings the city income, and I guess it indirectly supports the UBA. I've often wondered whether Urbana has outgrown the concept of corn, and maybe is there a new concept that might replace sweet corn as a major draw? And still, I think people come to the festival, yes, to eat corn, but there's many opportunities in the county in the nearby area in this county and Vermilion County to eat corn. One of the main draws are the entertainment values that the event brings, the quality of the bands, and the food booths, and the possibility to drink beer. So does corn become irrelevant? And is it time to is the UBA in a position where they want to reevaluate the whole reality of this particular festival? And is this why? Is that a potential future development that might require the enactment of a termination agreement?
No, actually, and as you were speaking, I looked through all of the agreements dating back to 2004, and all of them have a termination clause.
Okay.
It's just a matter of the city attorney rewriting the contracts this year and changing some language.
All right. Well, I mean, I would be open to evaluate the I guess the significance of corn as a major festival for Urbana, but people love it, and it's been traditional, and sometimes tradition rules, and there's no change. So the main aspect of the festival that's been a part of contention is positioning of the footprint of the festival in the downtown, and consideration of the local businesses and their aspect, how it affects them. And I see that there is a considered effort to address that by engaging them early on in the conversation. If the Sweet Corn Festival could have a different footprint in the downtown, is the UBA willing to begin to suggest how that change might be envisioned?
You know, every year we sit down and have conversations with the Public Works Department on what the footprint is, what can work logistically, and I think it would be incredibly difficult to change the footprint and keep it downtown. I know that a great deal of the businesses welcome the Sweet Corn Festival and don't want any of that to change. So it's, a lot of it just working with the businesses and ensuring that they're all, that all of their concerns are being heard, and working around tweaking things, to make sure that they get as much benefit out of it as the city does.
And lastly, one of the things that you're going to be exploring is adding a new stage, bringing a new the Folk and Roots Festival, potentially. We don't know if this is going to happen or work out or not, but that's great. There was just a notice in the paper, I think yesterday, about the Decatur Festival. I don't know if anybody on the City Council has ever attended the Decatur Festival. It occurs in August, I think. It's a very profoundly wonderful festival, well managed, multiple stage. I don't know if they have 8 stages or something, and they have numerous other events and 60 booths and all that. It's very vibrant and exciting. Quite a good model, I think, for what we wish to have, perhaps on a smaller scale because of our financial situation. So adding another stage, bringing another aspect of music appreciation to the this festival really is appealing to me, and I appreciate your willingness to explore it.
Thank you.
That's it.
Anyone else? Diane.
Hi. Thank you for sending the profit and loss statement. I just got that this afternoon, so I haven't had time to go through it completely. I did share it with the rest of the council so they could see the figures for 2013. A quick glance through it, it did raise a couple questions. One is, if you just look at Sweet Corn Festival income over expenses, the profit seems to be about $8,000, which is considerably less than what you were projecting for this year or this coming year of $25,000. What accounted for the very low income?
We had a
compared to other
few
years?
contributing factors to that this past year. In securing Kansas to perform at the Sweet Corn Festival, it put us over budget for entertainment. They had a last-minute change in their rider requiring additional costs related to stage and lights, which put us over budget. And while it was our highest attended festival on record, that hurt us because there were so many people there. People couldn't get to the ticket booths, they couldn't get to the food, they couldn't get to the beer, so they weren't spending money. So our ticket sales were down considerably considering the size of the crowd.
But you're budgeting lower ticket sales for this year.
We like to keep the ticket sales at a lower level and be excited if it's higher.
Okay. The other question I had was, it seems like there's a large amount of in-kind transactions through this budget, like over $100,000 in the Sweet Corn Festival and membership and various other things. How do you value what an in-kind donation is, and who reviews that value, and is there any kind of checks and, I mean, how does one operate with so many in-kind transactions?
The in-kind values are determined by the business that's providing the service. So if somebody were to purchase, like advertising, we get a lot of in-kind advertising for the Sweet Corn Festival. So they provide us with a breakdown of, if we were paying for that advertising, that's what the value would be. And that's how we assign those.
So will our matching grants be based on in-kind?
No. Well, only on membership, not on
Not
Sweet
on-
Corn. Only the matching would only be related to membership dues, whether it's cash dues or in kind.
And members can do in-kind for dues?
Yes.
What kinds of things do they give?
Well, we have advertising, use of banquet facilities, use of event space.
And that's valued by the donor as well?
Yes.
Charlie?
Cynthia, to follow up on Diane's comment, you had a very successful, you had lots of people last year, which is something we'd like. How are you going to address the issue of, if you have another big crowd like that, another successful attendance, how are you going to address the getting people tickets and things like that so that you can handle a bigger crowd?
Well, one thing we are doing this year is reconfiguring what's happening in the courthouse parking lot. We're removing the VIP tent, so that opens up a larger area for people to congregate and watch from the main stage. In addition, we're making sure that our headliner doesn't have quite the massive draw that Kansas had. Still wanting somebody with a big draw, just not that broad of a draw.
Well, I guess I'm, it strikes me that we want as big a crowd as we possibly can. How about, you can make some space adjustments, and I understand, there's physically there's only so much space to work with, but there may be and should be some exploration of more efficient ticket sales, advanced ticket sales, so that people don't have to stand in line the day of, things like that, so that people can get in and get out a little faster.
Yeah. Well, we do have 3 different ticket tents set up throughout the festival grounds. During the headliner, somebody's not going to leave their space in front of the main stage to go to a ticket tent at the other end of the festival grounds, they're going to go to the closest ticket tent. And when we have, you know, the massive crowd that we had this last year, you just couldn't move through the crowd, to the point that the police department was concerned about safety.
Okay, so I guess one of the things to do is to review the physical capacity, set a limit then, or expand the venue so that you can handle. I guess I would strongly encourage some kind of advanced ticket sales approach, or even you know, look, you know, this is what we all carry. You know, so many of us carry. It would seem to me that we should be able to buy tickets via smartphone or something, so that you don't have to stand in line. If you can come up with something like that, and I see Matt scratching his head here, maybe he can come up with something, or some of his friends can. It just strikes me that there should be a solution to the issue, because I hate standing in line, and I won't go to something where I have to stand in line, and so I would also suggest, well, I'll talk to you privately. There are a couple things I can think of personally that would make it more attractive to me to be there late into the evening, and I think that would work for others as well.
Okay, Diane, you have a question?
One thing we talked about last year and specifically asked to put into the agreement was the dollar value of the city's contribution in terms of the office space and the parking spaces. And it was in last year's agreement. It's not in this year's agreement. And I think for transparency in terms of what our total contribution is, that should be specified again in the agreement. The other thing that wasn't clear from this agreement is which funds are available for businesses who are located outside the downtown assistance for events. I couldn't find it I couldn't see it in there. So I think, again, for the rest of the businesses in the community who contribute to the UBA, and there are non-TIF funds going to the UBA, we set it up so that there were a few $1,000s available for businesses who weren't in the downtown. So I think that needs to be clarified in this agreement. And then when it relates to a spin-off of the Sweet Corn Festival, since so much of the staff time is spent planning the festival, if the festival were spun off to a third party, there's nothing in this agreement that would modify the financial support to reflect the whole lot of less work needed to be done.
Well, the goal in having a potential third party oversee the Sweet Corn Festival, we would still have our hand in the planning process of it, just not the entire process of it. But the goal of that would be to free up our time to spend, to focus more on the member businesses and get out in the community more.
But that wouldn't mean the city would have to support that part, right? Or would it? I mean, I'm just, you know, what have we clarified what will happen if a third party did take over the Sweet Corn Festival?
No, it hasn't been clarified yet. This agreement is a one-year agreement, and it covers only this calendar year's Sweet Corn Festival. And I'd say there's 0% chance that that the UBA will contract that out this year. But that deserves to be addressed if the UBA board and Cynthia choose to look at that more seriously. But that's really only been an idea that's been floated at this time and not pursued or authorized by the UBA board.
Well, this says it's a 3-year agreement.
Okay, we're talking about two different things.
Yeah, there's
resolution. The first resolution is a 3-year agreement, and the
Right.
Sweet Corn itself is the second resolution.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
perhaps we should focus on resolution number 2014-05-027R, just for moving this along.
That's the 3-year agreement?
Right. That's first on the agenda.
Okay. If I could respond to some of your questions, Councilwoman Diane, Marlon. First of all, you made a point about in-kind contribution and how the matching funds will work. Our city attorney wrote in several specific aspects of how that will be reported and reviewed independently by the city if submitted as a matching under the terms of the reimbursement and the agreement. So really independent of how UBEA looks at those in-kind contributions within UBA, we're going to scrutinize them when they're submitted to us. There's I think a 5-point description of how that's going to work on page 2 of the agreement, subsection or 1B. I think we have a numbering issue, Jim, we should correct. Secondly, adding the estimated value of the office space, we could probably add that correction in. It seems relatively minor. The value of the office space. We have an area in here where we estimate the value of in-kind contribution to the city. Is that, I don't know, we can look at that. We'll work with Jim on that. And for non-downtown events, I don't believe the UBA, Cynthia, can you explain to what extent UBA actually sponsors events? Because I wasn't under the impression that UBA really gave sponsorship to events.
We do.
We do give sponsorship
we
to the
do.
events.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But by changing the language and removing the restricted funding items, that allows us a little more freedom with sponsorship of activities throughout all of Urbana. The way the structure of the contract is now, we're limited, if I remember correctly, to $4,500 for Urbana promotion. And that's a pretty tight fit with what's already going on. But by removing the individual items, assigning specific values, and making it a little bit more general, that allows us a little bit more wiggle room with those types of things.
Did we touch on all the points you raised?
Yes, I am not ready to vote on this tonight, so I'll probably, if this comes to a vote, I'll be voting against it. But it's because I just have more questions about the agreement and the budget.
Bill?
So I'm having a little bit of trouble trying to figure out what the performance incentives are. If you're already doing enough to get the $35,000 match, as far as like, I thought this was supposed to be a little bit more performance-based. I see a lot more reporting and a little bit more oversight. Is that what you meant by performance-based when you talked about that before?
No, it would be maintaining the current level of membership that we have. That's something that we work hard on every year.
So the 35,000 match is only for new members?
No, it's for total.
Okay. So it sounds like you're going to get that no matter what. And then the other part that's decreasing is going from 50 to 45 to 40 over 3 years. So we're talking about a total reduction of $10,000, which is a little bit more than 10%. Guess I was hoping for a little bit faster reduction. I think, you guys do a great job. I'd like to see it be more of an independent group and less reliance on the city.
Okay. Anyone else? Is there a motion? Diane?
I'd move to send this to committee.
Is there a
Further
second?
discussion.
I'll second that.
Okay. We don't have to vote on that, I don't think.
It's discussable.
It's
right?
late.
I know it's late, but I was gonna. I think there's some concerns about getting this agreement rolling, and one of the possibilities is simply to put into a motion tonight those things that need to be added to the amendment, to the agreement, before the mayor signs it. So that's one way to go about it, so that we can get this done in a timely manner. But I'm not hearing a particular. Is there a particular reason we need to get this more underway tonight? I don't know, legal. Is there a particular reason we need to get this further along tonight than sending it to committee next week and finishing it next week and then approving it in 2 weeks?
I've not been given any particular time frame for completing an executed copy of this agreement.
Is it a problem for you, Cynthia?
We would just like to have something in place by July 1st.
Okay.
Which is when the current agreement expires.
Right.
It would actually be better, Diane, if we have a motion and we move to defer it so that we have to vote on it in 2 weeks, but also send it to committee for cleanup.
So move to defer?
Yes, well, let's get a motion on the floor directing the mayor or directing staff to clean this up.
Okay.
Bring it in for discussion at next committee meeting, but by moving to and then moving to defer this, it will have to be voted on the next council meeting.
I'll withdraw my motion to send to committee.
Okay, so let me make a motion, then you move to defer it after I make the motion. How about like this? Okay, I move to approve this agreement with the caveat that the rent and parking space and other in-kind city items that have been pointed out, the language issues, there are a couple places where the contract is a little out of order, that those be repaired. So that's my motion. So now if somebody seconds that, and then it can be deferred.
So I'll second it then.
Okay, motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts.
So I move to defer.
And I will second that. So now it's automatically deferred, and
Till
we
the
can
next council,
request
to the
that
16th.
Right. So we'll be voted on the 16th.
All right.
And now I would also request that staff bring us that language so that we can review it and bring up any other questions in committee next week.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, and then we should forward any questions we have to staff and Cynthia so that we can really hash out the rest of the questions at committee next week. I'm sort of trying to come up with
Okay.
something to recognize that we're late into the evening and we just want to get this done.
Okay, so we have resolution number 2014-05-028R, which is about the Sweet Corn Festival. Is that something that can be dealt with tonight, or are there more questions about that one?
I think the only question raised was this continuity thing, and I don't think it's going to happen,
Okay.
the third-party thing, so I would move approval of that.
Is there a second for the sweet corn?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Charlie, seconded by Bill. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you very much. There being no further business,
I-
whoops, there's more further business. Yes,
I do have
Diane.
one comment I want to make, which is related to this, and that is, and I'm not going to ask for the two motions I was going to ask tonight because it is late, but I am going to make a comment about our commitment to the Champaign County EDC, and it's related to our support and economic development efforts in other areas. I've just learned that we are declining to make the second installment of our financial commitment to the EDC for this fiscal year. With less than a month remaining, we are only paying half of what we made a commitment to pay, and the reason given was the city's financial bind. It's very concerning to me that we back out of our commitment at this point in time, considering the EDC has been budgeting and planning for this entire year, and it also shifts the financial burden to the remaining funding partners of the EDC, and many of these local government partners are the very same partners who were very generous in helping us direct QAT's funding to help us rebuild Windsor Road. So I really think we need to continue to pay our fair share in our economic development efforts. And our total commitment to the EDC was for $38,350. We've paid, I guess, about $19,000 of that, and the other $19,000 now the administration has made a decision not to pay it. And I really urge us to think about where we stand on this. This is an organization that has brought full-time jobs to downtown Urbana. It sponsors the Small Business Development Center, which counsels many businesses in downtown Urbana, and we value that because we give them a business incentive after they receive this counseling. And they're also in our goals to do our business plan, or our business climate survey later in the year. So I strongly urge us to reconsider this decision to not fund the EDC for this year.
I would like to explain that I did talk with Lori Patterson and Craig Rost, and they have agreed that considering Urbana's financial situation, that it's reasonable for us to pay half of it this year and pay half of it next year. And I did tell them that we're interested in having documentation on what they actually do, and they agreed that they need to do that. And I was talking about this back in 2005 and 2006. So I think they're committed to getting a more, some kind of way of measuring performance. But they're not upset with me because they did invite me to be on their executive board. So I think this is not me imposing something on them. I made an agreement with them that they think is reasonable. So, you know, we do have a big financial crunch, and we have put money into this year after year. The city of Champaign took a year off because they said that EDC had a large fund balance, and then they resumed their payments. So I said that when our finances get better, which I hope would be not too far, that we would you know, consider paying the whole amount. But they understood, and they agreed that we could get a break for 2 years.
Well, the reason I make this point is our funding for the UBA is $95,000 plus office and parking, and our funding for the EDC is a third of that. And if we're fully funding one organization, it's hard to justify, it's hard to understand why we're not the other. And particularly when one is focused on regional economic development. When we're in a financial bind, it's hardly the time to cut back on our support for economic development. The city of Champaign makes monthly payments. It helps their cash flow. They have a specific service agreement with the EDC, so I would say that would be a very good approach to take. But to just back out at the last minute is
it hasn't been at the last minute. We've been talking about this, and we do appreciate the small business services. We recognize that, but I think there's a real doubt about the total effectiveness, and I would agree that we should have some kind of an agreement like Champaign does, but we're in the process of getting that done. So we don't have it done yet. So, you know, I think that if anybody has suggestions for more things that we should fund, that we need to put a list of all those things together, because we have not found out what we're going to have to pay on our collective bargaining agreements, and I think we need to understand that before we make all the wish list be part of the budget.
Well, then I would say we need to make the UBA part of this discussion in relation to the EDC. We may have to make some choices.
Okay. Anyone else? There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.